We begin tonight with the Housing New Zealand dividend the government isn't going to get. When, quite informally and seemingly out of the blue, Stephen Joyce said over the weekend that the government wouldn't be getting a dividend from Housing NZ, they were immediately accused of playing catch-up on a Labour Party announcement that they would forego a dividend to spend the money on housing. Now, dividends had been expected. Last September, a $118 million dividend for the 2015-16 financial year was projected, and in budget documents just 2 months ago, Treasury projections had Housing New Zealand paying dividends of just under $100 million over 2 years. Then, Stephen Joyce says nothing. Was it a U-turn? Was it catch-up? Or had the government subsequently learnt that Housing New Zealand wasn't going to be paying them a dividend because they didn't have the money to be paying it with? To discuss this, I went to a Paula Bennett media conference today. It was held to discuss modular housing, and we will get back to that. But first, where does the government stand on taking money from Housing New Zealand? Can we talk about the dividend? I was just looking at a statement put out by you and Bill English on the 19th of May about the Greens saying, retain the dividend. For goodness sake, spend Housing NZ's dividend. You described that policy as a slogan, and Bill English said the dividend is not the issue. Now, lo and behold, the dividend is going to be retained for being spent on housing. Once again, you're playing catch-up, aren't you?
But the dividend's not the issue, and that's the point. So it hasn't been about them having to pay a dividend that has meant that we haven't had the development or the restructuring of houses as we've needed it. So it hasn't been the issue. So the fact that everyone's sort of up in arms in the last 24 hours is kind of irrelevant. They need to spend $1.8 billion to deliver to what the government expects them to be doing, which is redevelopments and maintaining the homes in a really broken state, a lot of them. And so if they need that money and they're unable to make a surplus, then we won't take a dividend. It's just not the issue.
Can I just get some clarity around the dividend? Were you expecting a dividend from Housing NZ anyway? Were you going to get a dividend from Housing NZ, or were you not expecting one?
We haven't been expecting one.
So aren't you claiming credit for not taking a dividend you weren't going to get?
Well, we just haven't been expecting a dividend in the last couple of months because we've been really aware of how much they were going to be spending on their redevelopment. So we're not trying to take credit or not take credit. It's just kind of, it is what it is.
But hasn't the suggestion of the past few days been that the government has decided to forego a dividend you weren't going to get?
I'm not sure how you're reading it or trying to make it sound through the media. It's just all been quite straightforward for me. It's not about the money, it's about the work that we need them to do.
Sorry to interrupt, but Stephen Joyce said at the weekend that Housing New Zealand didn't have to give back a dividend. Sure. So that is not correct, because Housing New Zealand are now saying that they told the government that they couldn't give you a dividend, and that's not the government's decision to make.
As I say, it's for us, it's not about the dividend, it's about the building program that needs to go on. So whether they said they were or he said they weren't and who was saying what is irrelevant to the program of work that's happening.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but did the government mislead people by saying that Housing New Zealand did not have to give back a dividend for 2 years?
Of course not. It's just really quite straightforward that we just got a massive building program that we want to get on with in Auckland in particular, but around the country. And so, there's an expectation of those Crown entities that can be delivering a dividend that they should. We want them to be working effectively. We've actually in the last few years always been giving Housing New Zealand back more than they've certainly been giving in a dividend. In the last couple of months, it's become quite aware for us that with the massive program that we've got going on, there's been a conversation going on whether they were going to give one or whether we'd forego as just kind of language, if you like, and not about the building program.
Minister, I'm really confused about this.
Well, I think you should speak to Bill English then, because he's actually the Minister of Housing New Zealand. He's responsible for it as the shareholding minister, and I suggest that you take it up with him.
But you weren't going to get a dividend.
Should we concentrate on the houses and the people that really need them? Because actually that's what I'm focusing on, and I think that's what's really important. And if you want to talk about the assets or the dividends, I think I've answered your questions really clearly, and that you should go and talk to the Minister in charge.
So for clarity, to summarise your answer, the government was never going to get a dividend from Housing NZ.
I think you should go and take it up with the Minister. I just think that you're getting all a bit caught in the stuff that's not important, and what we do need to concentrate on is the houses that we need to deliver for the people who really need them.
What I'm getting caught in, I think, is confusion around the
Why don't you talk to the Minister?
Okay,
that's in
but I'm
charge?
talking to the Minister that's in front of me now, and that's Paula Bennett, and I'm delighted to have the opportunity to. It does seem to me on the face of it, you guys aren't talking to each other, you're making this up as you go along, you've been caught flat-footed and out of step with reality.
Actually, I know exactly what I'm doing, so does this government. We're a comprehensive plan where we're actually focused on the people who we want to deliver to.
Now, Paula Bennett didn't hold that media conference to discuss the dividend. Instead, she wanted to give more details about modular housing, kit-set housing, if you like. In short, these are temporary homes that will be used as a response to a housing shortage that's seen people paying up to $1,400 a week to live in emergency housing, often units they're having to borrow money from WINS to pay for. We've looked at that in depth on Checkpoint. The exact timing of their availability still depends on formal agreements to access the land, density issues on the land, and building progress. So when, I asked Paula Bennett, will people be in them?
So there's a couple of things. I've got to get the unitary plan through because that means that the density can be done to a level where it's economically viable, and then finalise leases and then get going. So there, I can't guarantee because there's a couple of milestones you've always got. Until I'm turning the key in the lock, I always think there's a few things that could go wrong. But April, May next year is my plan before winter.
So somewhere in the region of 9 to 10 months away.
Yes, about 9. So I need the unitary plan to go through because otherwise I can only build half as much. So if that goes through, we've got the resource consenting all set to go. We can have it in on the day of voting almost, or the day after. Council have been really good to work with, and they're saying that they would fast track it and look at it immediately. I reckon I could have the diggers in there and turning over and getting pipes laid in December and literally have buildings ready by that sort of April or May. That is remarkably quick for a building process, as we all know, and on sort of ground that hasn't got houses on it.
Minister, are you just making this up as you go along? We've had Tapuia being a safety net. We've had $5,000 incentives for people to leave Auckland. Now we have the announcement of modular homes, and it's going to be 9 or 10 months before anyone's living in them at best. Is this a government scrambling to keep up with public opinion?
It's all a bit dramatic, John. What it is actually a government that's got a massive plan that's been working on things for a very long time. You know, I've been the Minister of Social Housing for 18 months now. I started off talking to the people that are the coal front, that are actually working with people who are disadvantaged and most vulnerable in this area. I've got a plan that's in front of me. I'm going to be making more announcements as I keep going, as you would hope that I am. I'm just constantly looking at every lever I can pull, and I'm going to keep doing my job, which is to actually do things that make a difference.